The white blocky pathway stretched infinitely in both directions, an unbroken chain of pale, immaculate stones that seemed to float in a space undefined by earthly constraints. Each block hovered just a sliver above the ground, emitting a soft, spectral glow that cast gentle shadows in the dim light. Taisea stood at its beginning, a lone figure against this dreamlike corridor, with nothing but silence and the vast unknown ahead. He took a slow breath, the air cool as it filled his lungs, and looked down the pathway as if searching for something beyond sight. His gaze was steady, distant, filled with the weight of unspoken purpose. "I stand here in deliverance," he murmured, his voice low and reverent, yet strong enough to disturb the silence. A faint breeze swept across the pathway, stirring the fine fur along his arms and ruffling the tip of his tail. Taisea closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the ancient current swirl around him, whispering through the air. He felt as though he were standing on the threshold of something immense, a doorway to worlds layered within each other. "An omen of the 7 pages," he whispered, his voice as soft as the wind. He opened his eyes, and as he spoke, the white blocks beneath him seemed to respond, glowing faintly as though acknowledging his words. Long ago, this was an incubation. Each word hung in the air like a spell, carrying echoes of ancient voices, of hands that had shaped and reshaped this pathway through untold cycles. Taisea's mind wandered, his gaze traveling to the distant reaches of the corridor. He thought of time's depth, of the mysteries that had given birth to worlds, and he could almost feel the stories held in these silent stones. "How is our world created? Washed from the rocks," he mused aloud, a quiet awe in his tone. "Each scroll is a glimpse into a world with no limits, except the ones we place on the possibilities we can view." The pathway felt alive under his feet, and each step forward was a journey into a new layer of understanding. Taisea moved with calm reverence, his footfalls soundless against the smooth surface of the blocks, carrying him forward like a figure in an endless dream. As he passed between 2 massive white blocks standing like pillars on either side, he noticed a carved eye on each, staring down, watchful and ancient. The eyes bore into him as if from across ages, protectors of this place, sentinels of knowledge. He paused, feeling their gaze on him, and he spoke softly as though confiding a secret to these silent watchers. "All thought is now," he said, his voice gentle. "All thought is one." The wind stirred again, this time with a stronger pull, as if brushing against his back and urging him forward. Taisea's tail flicked in response, catching the current like a paintbrush in the hands of an artist. He extended his claws, fingers reaching outward with instinctive grace, and he raised his palm to the empty air. In his hand, an alchemical symbol, a simple upside-down triangle, glowed faintly. It was the sign of water, a symbol of life's unending flow and the primordial depths of creation. He stared down at the symbol as if it were a living piece of the universe itself, a tiny fragment holding more power than its size suggested. "Even a small fragment sends ripples," he murmured, feeling the truth resonate through his bones. "Even a small fragment, a web is spun." He let the triangle's subtle light wash over his hand, feeling the weight of endless cycles embedded in its shape. His mind drifted as he tried to make sense of the complex layers within this simple icon. "But what it comes to," he continued, "is the balancing of repetition." The words tumbled from him like water over stones, carrying their own rhythm, a cadence that echoed the unchanging patterns of the world. He could almost see the ripple effects of each thought, each act, spreading outward, intersecting with others, a tapestry woven from threads of intention and action. "Is the animation 10, he asked. "Is the animation 20? Is it 5 or 40? Numbers, symbols, and figures danced in his mind, each one connected by invisible lines, their significance as vast as the space around him. He moved forward, his feet descending onto a set of stairs hewn from smooth stone. Each step down was like a heartbeat, a measured descent into deeper realms. Around him, the grass swayed, green tendrils brushing against his ankles in a quiet, melodic rhythm, their whispers filling the air with secrets of ancient roots. "What is the purpose of the written?" he asked softly, as though the stones themselves might answer. The silence deepened as he walked, and his gaze drifted to the towering pillars that rose along the pathway. Each was etched with intricate carvings, sigils that seemed to come alive in the faint glow of the stones. There were zoomorphic figures, half beast, half divine, carved in internal poses, their eyes locked onto his as though waiting to impart a message. Tales of long-forgotten worlds and creatures lived within these stones, a silent narrative trapped in time. He reached out, his hand tracing the grooves in the stone, feeling the energy embedded within. Is it for epic proportions? He wondered aloud, his tone carrying a note of humor. The world around him remained still, the answer hidden somewhere beyond sight. Taisea continued his path, his steps steady but slow as he pondered the purpose of creation, of the written word, of existence. Or, he said with a faint smile, for comedic relief. The question lingered, filling the empty air with a lightness that softened the gravity of his thoughts. He stopped in front of a particularly dense cluster of symbols, each one pulsing faintly with life, as if they held the essence of those who had carved them. One can continue to etch, he murmured, a hint of wistfulness coloring his voice, for the sea has no peak. He felt the vastness of this thought settle within him, a realization that seemed to stretch endlessly, like the very pathway he walked. How many hands had added their mark to this stone? How many minds had poured their stories into it? Each mark was a part of a larger story, an endless scroll of thoughts etched into the world's memory. Is it but a novel constellation, he wondered, his voice barely above a whisper, or a few verses to sow? The breeze carried his question, lifting it high, letting it echo far into the unknown around him. Taisea looked up at the sky, at the invisible points where time and space met and intertwined, and he let his question dissolve into the silence. What is the purpose? He asked the infinite, closing his eyes for a moment to feel the pulse of the world around him, the rhythm of the stones, of the wind, of the ancient silence vibrating through him, filling him with a deep, unspoken understanding. When he opened his eyes, they were alight with wonder, a quiet, enduring curiosity that no answer could fully satisfy. What do you intend to perceive in the flow? He asked, his voice carrying a question directed not only at the universe, but at himself. He reached a larger stone, layered and textured with countless carvings, each one a representation of different periods in time. Images of lives long past, present, and yet to come adorn the rock, their stories woven together into a single living scroll. He could see the connection between each era, a chain of existence that stretched beyond any single moment. Every time is connected, he said softly, conviction resonating in his tone. This much I know, to the novel or to the image that we cast into a living scroll. The words faded, drifting into the silence as he reached the edge of a vast stone ledge. Before him lay an endless horizon, a land that seemed to merge seamlessly with the sky in a haze of muted colors. The horizon was a canvas of potential, a place where futures yet unformed waited, cloaked in mist for their turn to emerge. A faint smile graced his lips as he stood there, feeling the depth of possibility stretch before him. The future is strings, he murmured, his gaze soft, as if seeing something hidden within the mist. He held on to the thought, letting it reverberate within him, feeling its truth echo in every fiber of his being. Who needs to be good at the work, he said, his voice filled with quiet certainty, when it comes from the soul? A stronger wind swept past, catching his fur and tail, swirling around him as he stood at the ledge, gazing out into the vastness. His heart pulsed with a deep understanding that transcended time, place, and the limits of thought. The symbols carved into the stones, the quiet witness of eras, the very stones beneath his feet, all of it felt connected, woven together by a purpose that stretched beyond the grasp of any one mind. He looked down at his hands, spreading his claws wide, feeling the strength and purpose that had carried him here. A small ripple formed at his feet, expanding outward in concentric rings, like a message sent from the stones, acknowledging his journey, his understanding. In that stillness, he sensed the pulse of creation, an ancient beat that had existed since the dawn of time. It vibrated in the stones, in the symbols, in the wind that whispered across the vast expanse, connecting him to every being that had ever walked this path. He took a final breath, feeling the weight of purpose settle within him, calm and unbreakable. The future lay before him, an infinite scroll waiting to be written, each step a word, each word a story, each story a thread in the tapestry of existence. With one last deep glance at the endless horizon, Taisea stepped forward, merging with the future that awaited him. His path was woven into the depths of possibility, and his purpose was clear, steady, as boundless as the mysteries of the world.